I had to really, really come into contact with what it's like to be with someone suffering and to acknowledge our own helplessness in that process. And so the work becomes, how do I stay connected to myself? How do I stay connected to others? How do I stay connected to meaning while that's all still here with me? The only way that I could begin that work was to allow myself to be a subject who was impacted by the experience, to not be the fixer, to not be someone who was trying to prevent things from happening. I needed to not leave myself behind anymore.
Welcome to the Transforming Trauma podcast. Transforming Trauma is presented by the Complex Trauma Training Center. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. Samantha Montemayor is a licensed professional counselor supervisor, NARM Master Therapist, and practice owner based in Austin, Texas. With nearly 2 decades of experience across community mental health, crisis work, and leadership, she specializes in complex trauma, men's issues, and cultural identity. Her work integrates attachment, interpersonal neurobiology, and NARM, alongside somatic and emotionally focused approaches. Samantha also mentors clinicians, provides organizational trainings on trauma and health equity, and serves as a training assistant with the Complex Trauma Training Center, supporting advanced NARM trainings and consultation. Please enjoy my conversation with Samantha Montemayor. Okay, today I am joined by Samantha Montemayor. So happy to have you. Welcome to the podcast, Sam.
Thanks, Emily. It's so nice to be connected with you in this way.
Yeah, so great to be with you. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise.
Yeah, and I'd love to know what you would like our listeners to come away with from our conversation today.
I want to offer listeners hope around living with what doesn't resolve. The kind of grief that's tied to circumstances that are unchangeable and enduring, and how we learn to live with them without losing ourselves or leaving ourselves behind.
Yeah, and I'm sure anyone listening to this, if they haven't already, at some point in our lives, we all experience something of that nature. So really looking forward to hearing from you more about this. If you could, tell us a little bit about who you are and where in the world you are.
Yeah, I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor. I'm a NARM Master Therapist, and I've been in the field for about 18 years. I've done crisis intervention, victim advocacy, worked in community mental health, and held several leadership roles. And all that all really informed how it is that I see the human capacity to heal, resilience, and especially when it's connected to how people come back home to themselves. Now I have a small private practice. I also do consulting and training. And I primarily work with complex trauma, men's issues, and cultural identity. And usually with cultural identity, it's around Latinidad. And I work with clients utilizing NARM, also emotionally focused and somatic oriented practices. And I also supervise associate LPCs on their way to licensure.
That's so fantastic. I'm just so appreciative that we have you in our community, that you offer so much to the world and, of course, to our community.
Yeah, thanks, Emily.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you wouldn't mind, could you share with us a little bit about how you came to working with complex trauma?
Yeah. So when I began my career, I was working in juvenile probation. I had just finished my bachelor's. And as many of you all know, once you get to your bachelor's degree, we're not practicing yet. We don't have our master's. We're not clinicians, but we usually want to do work that's in the social service field. And I volunteered there first and eventually got hired on. And I found that about 98% of my caseload at any given time, when I did a social history with the families and with the children, that they had experienced some form of trauma. I didn't look at the numbers, but if I could guess, about 98% of my caseload had experienced or experiencing or had experienced trauma in their household along with their caregivers. So intergenerational trauma that they had also experienced. And I was just curious about that intersection between trauma, mental health, and justice system involvement. And my role there was really to help the children and their families really get connected to services in the hopes that they then, complete their conditions of probation and then have hopefully, right, what they need to begin and continue on with their healing. But that work, I think, was my sort of the beginning, the entrance into really seeing the long-term impacts that trauma can have on families, on children, and what that looks like from, how it is that they relate to themselves, how they relate to one another, and just different challenges that these families go through.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm appreciating that even as a young a young person straight out of your undergrad that you were already starting to track some of these
Mhm.
things. So, did you know already at that point you wanted to be a clinician? Were you looking to grad school already or did your work volunteering and that other work that you did kind of bring you to that?
Yeah, I kinda had an interesting way into becoming a therapist. I knew I was really interested in psychology in high school, and I remember, like, Googling and looking that up specifically, like, what are the roles and what does that look like and what does the
Mm,
schooling look like? And for a while after I had graduated with, I did my undergrad in, psychology and criminology, I double majored, and I thought I wanted to go to med school to become a psychiatrist.
mm,
And so I started doing my pre-med prerequisites. And in the process of that, I was able to connect with a couple of psychiatrists and like kind of like a day in the life. Like, what does it
mhm,
look like? Like how do you spend your time? What does it look like in your interventions with clients? And what are you offering? And how often do how long is the therapy versus the medication management? It was like
mhm.
everything was medication management, that there wasn't any of what I was hoping to offer. And so I stopped doing that. And then I ended up applying to grad school and got my master's in counseling. And that's how I entered the field.
It's such an interesting path to hear everyone's way of getting there. It's like even if we know kind of the kind of work we wanna do, sometimes the
Mhm.
like finding our way there can feel a little different than what we anticipated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Especially when I think about like the time I took between my undergrad and beginning grad school, I think was so useful for me personally because so much of what I was doing was kind of in and around. Like I mentioned, I was a juvenile probation officer. And so I worked with justice involved youth and their families. But then I became a victim counselor and I worked
Mhm.
primarily in the child abuse unit, working with children and their families after an outcry of child abuse has been made. And during those roles, I'm really seeing, right? Like in the moment, it's really about, especially around victim advocacy, it's helping people get connected to resources, helping them navigate the justice system, psychoeducation, being the bridge to continued care for therapy and ongoing services. But all of that, I think, really helped shape how I had more of the application pieces coming into learning the theory. So I could
Mm.
pull a little bit from what it was that I was seeing while I was also learning all the pieces in grad school. So I felt like that was really supportive to have both of those experiences.
Yeah. So you got your master's in counseling, and then what were you doing? Maybe I'm curious when you found NARM, how you found NARM, what brought you
Yeah,
to it?
yeah. I see. I got my master's in counseling. I was still working as a victim counselor. And after that, I started working at Travis County Correctional Complex. So I was, again, working with justice involved individuals, primarily in the psychiatric intensive care unit. Clinicians who have done that kind of work, we commonly talk about how prisons or jails can sometimes be some of the largest hospitals that are helping try and care for individuals who are experiencing severe psychiatric conditions. And so that was really impactful in my own learning and kind of navigating some of those system challenges and difficulties. And from there, I went to, again, victim advocacy. I started a victim services program at a local law enforcement department. And then I went into community mental health and I oversaw a crisis team. And while I was working, overseeing the crisis team, is when I found NARM. And I remember I was enrolled in another training and I had gone through the first module of that training. And I remember I was at a brunch with a couple of colleagues and I had said, "Hey, I'm in the middle of this training and I saw NARM pop up and I'm wanting to actually I'm really interested in this modality, but I also really want to get trained in this modality." She goes,
Mm.
"Look, if I had to choose between the two," she goes, "I have training in both." She goes, "I would go NARM all the way."
Mm.
So I went ahead and I paused my other training, and I started getting a training in NARM in 2021.
Again, I just got goosebumps. Like, I always love hearing everyone's origin story in terms of coming to NARM.
Yeah.
And I love that you were already like one module of this other
Yeah.
modality and feeling into there was something that NARM was offering that you were
Mhm.
curious about. Do you have a sense of what that was? What felt different to you, or what were you drawn to?
Absolutely. I think that feels so clear to me. It's more clear now, but in the
Mhm.
moment, I was really lucky. I had a really incredible clinical supervisor when I finished grad school. Her name is Sunny Lansdale, Dr. Sunny Lansdale in Austin, Texas. And she was, when I was in grad school, trauma was an elective, it wasn't a requirement. And so she
Mhm.
taught the trauma course. And I remember 6 of us had signed up for it. And they had said if they didn't get more students, they were going to cancel the course. So we went and we petitioned and we said, please, please, we really want this course. It's really important to us. And, especially in the work that I was doing at the time, I was
Mhm.
working with 100% trauma. I was working in victim counseling. So I was working with individuals in crisis in the moment who had experienced such extensive and severe traumatic events. And I felt like this could really support me. And Dr. Lansdale was just, not only did she herself have such wisdom and experience that she was so generous in offering to us, but she also was so open to continued learning. Like she was just so hungry and excited when she was hearing about new modalities and learned about somatic experiencing from her. And I mean, she trained with Francine Shapiro in EMDR and was part of
Mhm.
like the beginning research papers that were showing efficacy around the impacts of that modality. So yeah, I just felt so lucky to have that experience and to be exposed to so many different trauma modalities. And at the time, NARM hadn't really made its way to Texas yet. We hadn't heard about it. And so, because of that, I had a lot of training in interpersonal neurobiology, had training in EMDR, really attachment oriented. And so, NARM just kind of felt like the perfect, it would just finish the puzzle for me
Mhm.
in the work that I was already doing. I was already doing a lot of being with, but a lot of pressuring myself,
Mhm.
probably a lot of, if the listeners are familiar with an arm in any way, I was out of my 50-50 a lot. A lot of pressure to know and to interpret was how I was taught, a lot of interpreting. And so I felt like, again, like NARM really turned so much of what I knew on its head, but it also helped fill in some of the missing pieces when it came to how exactly we work with complex trauma and how different it is and how we're working with shock trauma.
Yeah, I get some real common themes. I resonate
Yeah.
with so much of what you're saying and just feel gratitude for the mentors that you had in your life that like brought you to this way of already holding this work and then acknowledging there was this piece of I'm out of my 50-50, even if you didn't quite have that
Mhm.
language yet, but that felt sticky to you and you were curious about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I love that. So you went through the NARM training because I do want to get to like some specific things that we want to talk about today, but I am really curious about
Sure.
how that training maybe brought you to holding this work that you do with grief, if I can name that. But
Oh,
however you
yeah.
want to talk about that.
What a great question, because I think it's still evolving, but it's at a point where I feel like, it has enough, right? Like I think my evolving relationship to grief at this point is at a place where I can be more connected to it in myself personally and therefore more effective in the work that
Mhm.
I offer with clients. And I mean, I didn't know in 2021 that any of this would lead toward a different relationship to grief for me, like at all. Initially, being in the breakout rooms and the active coaching, I was noticing a lot of the pressure I put on myself, a lot of the ways that a lot of my adaptations around performing, around pressuring, around trying to get it right. This was a wildly different way of working for
Mhm.
me and in being relationship to self. I think so much of what I learned in grad school, especially around therapist as subject, was leave ourselves at the door.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, of course we have lives. Of course we're human. We're not acting like we're not. And we have stuff that we're holding and probably moving through. Sometimes maybe only a couple of steps ahead of our own clients,
Mm-hmm.
but you leave that at the door. And then if that starts to come up, it's not useful at all. You
Mm-hmm.
dismiss it, you shut it down, you quiet it. And I got really good at that.
Yeah.
Just very good at really compartmentalizing. So when I was being invited to bring myself in, it was like taking something out from behind lock and key.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I so appreciate the way you say that. And I'm feeling really touched even just in this moment. I'm resonating so much with that. But like being able to hold our own humanity and this
Yeah.
idea that you're bringing forward of like, we don't have to keep it behind lock and key. It can actually be useful.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I so appreciate you bringing that in. So that's something that felt you were feeling into that already in the
Oh,
training.
yeah. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, during each module you know, I think it took time after level 2 for me to really integrate what even happened. Like, so
Yeah.
much of the learning was kind of washing over me, because there wasn't this rubric of like, "Oh, you do this, 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 and this, and if you do that, then you're doing it correctly."
Hmm.
It's a framework, it's an invitation, it's a way of being. We have our pillars that hold us and, keep the frame and help us orient. But so much of it is about what's happening for us internally and how that actually informs so much of the work. And so I think I did the master's training after that with Larry in 2022. And again, right, still continuing to deepen, but I started to feel a little more comfortable in the active coaching. I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm just gonna name it. I'm really nervous and I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself right now. And I honestly don't mind you interrupting or telling me, you know, or helping support maybe different choice points, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm gonna use that against myself." And some way of just like naming what I was gonna do helped it kind of settle down.
Mm.
And it also invited the active coach to ask me, like, "Okay, after I did that, what are you doing with it?" Then I was invited to become a training assistant. So I started assisting with the trainings in level 2, and I felt like each time I'd go around the material again and get the opportunity to support students in their learning was another way it was deepening within me.
Yeah.
I also started with a NARM therapist. And so I shifted from the therapist I had been working with to working with one who primarily used NARM as their modality. And again, right, just so many different shifts were happening for me internally. And then from there, I continued with different advanced trainings in space and did the retreat where you and I got to connect a little
Hmm.
more on together. And we did an intensive together in Austin also, which
Hmm.
was really lovely. And now I'm in training to become a lead TA. And the experience of allowing myself to be a subject in each of these roles that I'm occupying is a very different way that I'm orienting to my work, to my offers around mentorship and consultation and helping support and educate others. I'm not in the role. I occupy a role, but I am very much a human being who's a subject and her humanity in that role.
Yeah. Can I share, Sam, a little bit of my experience of you and just some of behind the scenes? Is that
Sure.
and if
Yeah.
you're not comfortable with it, we can cut it out, whatever. But
Okay.
I have been so appreciative of, being in some of our meetings where we're talking about I think we've done some case consults together maybe, but
Yeah.
some of the training meetings where we're talking about the work and how we're supporting students. I have so appreciated how you bring your humanity and your heart
Mm.
to that work. And, the way you kinda like what you said, you kinda name your process, it has been so valuable to me to kinda watch that unfolding and your transparency about what's happening for you, that you name things that so many of us, I think, are holding maybe consciously or even unconsciously. I know for me, there have been several moments where you've named something and I was like, "Oh,
Mm.
that's what that is. I felt that too." And, like, you kinda put language to it. So, I've just been so appreciative of how you've, allowed all of us into your process in that way and
Mm.
been transparent in a way that I know has really helped my learning. So I don't know, I wanted to name that with you because it's, it's benefited not only, I'm sure, of course, the students, but then also like the training teams when we're doing those trainings.
Mhm.
So I've been so excited as I heard you were moving into this lead TA role because it just makes sense to me.
Emily, that's so sweet to hear.
Yeah.
I'm so touched. I felt like tenderness coming up for
Yeah.
me. And it's a certain type of like sweetness to be witnessed doing the very thing that used to be really
Mhm.
scary,
Yeah.
and to have that be a source of connection and a source of support. I think I had a lot of fears around allowing people to see me in process. Sherry has so I hope it's okay that I'm mentioning this, but Sherry has a term. She says half baked, right?
Yeah.
Like, and we're never done, right? We're never
Yeah.
done. We're always continuing to unfold and become. But there's like again, like that pressure of allowing people to see me in process, and so it's so sweet to receive the gifts that get to happen when I allow more of that.
Mhm. It's a gift to all of us. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So I wondered if you could share with us a little bit more about this grief piece. And I know that you've done some work in our community, and there's some
Mhm.
things that we chatted about, maybe you bringing into this conversation if it feels right. So,
Sure. I was invited to do a workshop at the retreat that we had last year. It was the first CTTC retreat. And when I was thinking about the topic that I wanted to bring, pretty quickly I landed on grief. And I think for me at least, the type of grief that I've experienced in my life has been around death and loss. And there was a very like post marker to the type of grief I had experienced. And currently, now, and at the time, I was moving through a kind of grief that doesn't resolve. That's what I was mentioning earlier, the grief of unchangeable and enduring circumstances. So that might be something like the changes in a parent or a grandparent who is living with dementia, or a divorce, a breakup, and with a romantic partner, or even a friendship, a life changing medical diagnosis, the aftermath of an accident. And for me personally, it was having a loved one who struggles with addiction. And the way that at least I had been in relationship to her when she was in her addiction was, I think from this place, I can say I was trying to like outpace the dark. Like if I
mm,
could only,
wow.
offer this particular resource, if I could only say the right words, if maybe this time that I showed up in this particular way, it might mean all the difference, and she'll come back to us. And this is someone I'm incredibly close to. Someone who had spent a year and a half in sobriety. And so when she relapsed and has been in the process of recovery and relapse for the last several years now, I had to begin asking myself some really difficult questions. But one of which was, who am I to say I know what's right for her?
Mm,
Like, of course, we don't want our loved ones struggling. We don't want them suffering. If there's something that we can do to somehow intervene, I'll move mountains to do it. But as I kind of allowed myself to be with that question, and then the question that came thereafter was, who gets to decide what's right for her other than the person whose life is theirs to own? And I had to accept that she was not ready to begin her journey back to sobriety. And in accepting that, all I was left with was the impact. And I had to really, really grieve that. I had to really, really come into contact with what it's like to be with someone suffering, and to acknowledge our own helplessness in that process. That we know there are things we can do, but there are some pains that aren't going anywhere. And so the work becomes, how do I stay connected to myself? How do I stay connected to others? How do I stay connected to meaning while that's all still here with me?
mm,
It's with me when I'm here with you right now.
yeah.
And the only way that I could begin that work was to allow myself to be a subject who was impacted by the experience, to not be the fixer, to not be someone who was trying to prevent things from happening. I needed to not leave myself behind anymore.
I'm so struck with that image you named of outpacing the dark.
Mm.
And then even just this last piece that you said, leaving myself behind. I'm sure there's many of us that can relate to this idea of like outpacing the dark. I'm just trying to stay ahead. And in that
Yeah.
process, I'm leaving myself behind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reality is when I look back at the ways that I might have intervened and I would do it all over again.
Yeah.
I would do it all over again because I know some of those things planted seeds.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of those things made a difference. And at the same time, it's not sustainable.
Mhm.
And so beginning to accept that, beginning to feel the impact of that, I think really allowed me to be in relationship to the experience and to her in a very different way, in a way that actually protects our relationship.
Hmm.
I know that one of the reasons I never shared, when you were at, and I were at that intensive together, it was only the second time that I had shared about having a loved one with addiction. And I think one of the reasons why, or what I told myself, one of the reasons why I had never shared that is because I was worried about people judging her. I was worried about how people view addiction.
Mm.
And I think that's all still true, right? There is a lot of stigma around that. And especially when we're faced with impossible circumstances, the decisions that we make around that. But I think a piece of it was also protecting me.
Mm.
Like the more I didn't tell people about it, of course, my husband knows, my best friend knows, and me and my mom have a deep connection around mutual support around this. But I think not sharing it was a way I got to keep leaving myself behind.
Mm.
And so as that began to shift, I shifted something in my relationship with her that I had never in my wildest dreams imagined I would do. I created a little distance for us. I wrote her this letter and told her how much I loved her, told her how much I believed in her. I told her that if she ever needs help connecting to a resource, she knows I'm the one.
Mhm.
And while she's in the space of not being ready to journey further into sobriety, that there wasn't a way that we could continue to be in a relationship, to keep the relationship we know intact. So that distance actually is the way that I get to protect it. It's the way that I get to keep connection to her that isn't wrought with the dynamics that were, I think, in many ways slowly and maybe pretty rapidly before I kind of came to this place, impacting my own mental and physical health in ways that, again, wasn't sustainable.
Yeah. I appreciate that you named, like, we make our choices and a
Mhm.
like, I wouldn't take I'm thinking of my own situation here, right? Like, I wouldn't take those choices back because I like how you said that, like, they plant seeds. And
Mhm.
also there's times, you noticed there was a point where you recognized it wasn't sustainable, and
Yeah.
then creating this space,
Yeah.
in a way to protect the relationship, actually.
Mhm.
That's so yeah, so important.
And all that comes up from that because it wasn't like I got to just do that and also being, Latina and we come from a collectivist culture and um, being in community and in support of one another, there was just so much guilt I had about that decision. It's not all the way resolved for me. I question it sometimes. And other times I I can have my own back a little more around it. But then I think I was able to recognize that the guilting myself is a way to keep me in that dynamic of
Mhm.
pressuring myself, of needing to fix, needing to know, of trying to prevent the grief, of trying to prevent the loss, the pain, the uncertainty, the unpredictability of having a loved one who struggles with that. And I think in the process of that, what's been interesting for me is like how love really is the only thing that stands a chance against death and loss.
Hmm.
And it's incredible what becomes available to you when you're really with the authenticity of your experience. And there are moments where I'm experiencing something and I'm having like an incredible time. I'm really enjoying myself. I'm like, man, she would love this. She would so she deserves to be here. She would really enjoy this. Or I'll get to laughing about something and I'll just be cracking up and I'm like, she would find this so funny. She is so funny. And so I write to her about it.
Mm.
I don't send her the letters, but I write to her about it. And I think that's some way that I soothe the ache. I think that's some way that I resource myself to be connected with her in whatever way possible when I can't have the connection that I really want.
Mm.
And so I think grief for me, again, is how do you live with it? How do you carry it? How does it get to be here with me in my work, in the room? It's not eliminating her or exiling that part of myself. It's being in relationship to it. And some days there are hard days, hard moments, moments I really wish she was with me. And then other days it's a little lighter. So coming back to the workshop, when I thought about bringing that in, I thought about how do I offer something that encompasses all those layers of grief? We have death, we have loss, and we have unchangeable and enduring circumstances. And it was such a healing experience for me to offer this for other people to come into, have a space where they can touch into that within themselves and to hear people say, like, I didn't even know I was holding that as grief, or I didn't even know that I hadn't grieved that, or I didn't realize all that I had maybe been dismissing or minimizing within myself. Um, and I started that workshop with a guided visualization called the Grief House. If you would be open to it, I can walk us through it together and see
Absolutely.
what emerges.
I want to settle in a little bit here. Listeners, you can settle in too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have my notes that the actual notes that I took with me
Oh,
over there.
great.
So it's sweet to kind of reconnect
Yeah.
to this myself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you already got ahead of me here. So take a moment to settle into your seat
Mm.
and let your eyes close gently or lower your gaze if that feels more comfortable. And bring your attention to your breath. No need to change it, just notice it. Inhale and exhale. Again, inhale and slowly exhale. And let yourself arrive here in this moment. Now I invite you to imagine a quiet path stretching out in front of you. You begin to walk along it, step by step. As you walk, you notice the surroundings beginning to change, becoming familiar in some way, perhaps even nostalgic. Up ahead, you see a house. This is your grief house. It is not a haunted house or a scary place, though it may hold difficult things. It is simply a house where different parts of your grief live. Notice what it looks like: the shape, the size, the setting. You arrive at the front door. You have the key. You're in control. When you are ready, you open the door. Step inside. Notice the temperature, the lighting, the smell of the air. Take a breath. You are safe. In front of you, you see hallways leading to different rooms. Each room holds a part of your grief: a memory, a person, a feeling. Some rooms may feel warm and filled with love. Others may feel heavy or unclear. Let yourself walk slowly, allowing your intuition to guide you. Which room are you drawn to first? Go there. Open the door gently. Step inside. What do you see? Take a moment here. Look around. Who or what is in this room with you? What does this room want to show you? You don't need to fix or change anything. Just notice. And when you're ready, leave this room and continue through the house. You may pass a room you don't want to enter. Notice that feeling. You don't have to go in, not today. Just acknowledge that the room exists. You can come back to it if and when you're ready. You are always in control in this space. Now, begin to make your way back to the front of the house. Take one last look around. Let your house know you'll return when you're ready. Step outside and gently close the door behind you. Begin to walk back along the path you came in. Feel your breath again, your body in the room. Gently begin to return to the present. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Sam.
What was that like for you?
You know, we all have different sort of flavors and different material around our grief. And I was curious that I had multiple, like each room held kind of a different thing. And when I first entered the house, in my mind, I thought, oh, this is one grief house and I have another grief house. But the reality is that each room kind of interplayed. Like I felt the different griefs coming up, which it wasn't how I was holding it in my mind when I first went in. So yeah, it brought some curiosity to me around how I'm holding my griefs and how they even kind of interplay with each other.
Thanks for sharing, Emily. Thanks for being willing to
Mhm.
be guided in that visualization. When I was offering that at the workshop, my intention was really about inviting their subjectivity, inviting us to be in relationship to our grief. And I think about, the room I can go into right now is a room with my loved one who's struggling with addiction. But I have another room. I have a grandmother right now who's in the middle of receiving treatment for breast cancer. And I'm not ready yet to open that room. I'm, you know, I'm connected to it. I know that there is some fear and tenderness and uncertainty with it, but I'm not yet ready to be that close to it yet. The impact of it. And so yeah, I think it was just like a really like enlightening experience for many in the group and myself to see like how it allowed us to be in the direct experience of how we might be relating to certain types of grief in our life.
Yeah. And I love that permission to like, I'm just not ready to go in there yet.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
exists. I know it's
Uh-huh.
there. And it's also totally okay if I'm not going there yet.
Yeah.
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 I know there was one other piece I was hoping you would share.
Was this the poem?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to share that one. This is one of my favorite poems it's about death, but I really see in how, well, I'll just read it and then we could see if there's
Great.
anything that comes up for you, but
Mhm.
it's called The Afterlife by Billy Collins. While you're preparing for sleep, brushing your teeth, or rifling through a magazine in bed, the dead of the day are setting out on their journey. They are moving off in all imaginable directions, each according to his own private belief. And this is the secret that silent Lazarus would not reveal, that everyone is right, it turns out. You go to the place you always thought you would go, the place you kept lit in an alcove in your head. Some are being shot up a funnel of flashing colors into a zone of light, white as a January sun. Others are standing naked before a forbidding judge who sits with a golden ladder on one side, a coal chute on the other. Some have already joined the celestial choir and are singing as if they have been doing this forever, while the less inventive find themselves stuck in a big air conditioned room full of food and chorus girls. Some are approaching the apartment of a female god, a woman in her 40s with short, wiry hair and glasses hanging from her neck by a string. With one eye, she regards the dead through a hole in her door. There are those who are squeezing into the bodies of animals, eagles and leopards, and one trying on the skin of a monkey like a tight suit, ready to begin another life in a more simple key. While others float off into some benign vagueness, little units of energy heading for the ultimate elsewhere. There are even a few classicists being led to an underworld by a mythological creature with a beard and hooves. He will bring them to the mouth of a furious cave, guarded over by Edith Hamilton and her three-headed dog. The rest just lie on their backs in their coffins, wishing they could return so they could learn Italian, or see the pyramids, or play some golf in a light rain. They wish they could wake in the morning like you and stand at a window examining the winter trees, every branch traced with the ghost writing of snow.
Hmm. I love it, the vivid imagery.
Yeah.
It's bringing up there's like a lightness to it that's
Yeah.
that I'm curious how you relate to that poem.
Oh, I think they're very similarly. There's this lightness about death,
Mhm.
like whatever we believe is going to happen. It's a sweet idea to imagine that we're all right.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the last paragraph, I remember the first time I read this, like hit me like a gut punch.
Hmm.
Like they all wish they were you.
Yeah.
I get to still be here. As I'm in relationship to death or loss or uncertainty or unpredictability, I am still the author of my own life. And being able to find some way, even in the presence of enduring grief, that there is still some way to come back to myself. There is still some way for me to be in relationship to life and to be connected and to have joy and to have sorrow and to hold it in both hands and to allow myself to not compartmentalize those parts of my life that at one point I think were just too big for me to know how to carry
Hmm.
in the way I'm I'm learning how to carry them today.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think in many ways that helps support me in being able to help explore and walk with clients as they hold their grief that feels like it's too big for them to carry.
Yeah, as you say that, it reminds me there's an image, and probably most people who are listening to this, maybe you've seen this image, but there's this idea of like the jar and the rock inside the jar. The grief is the rock. And most of us have this idea that the rock will get smaller, our grief will somehow get smaller,
Mhm.
as we grow, and the reality feels more like the jar has to get bigger. And so the rock, the grief, in many ways stays there. There's parts about it that stay the same. Maybe it's the same size, but we expand around it and
Yeah.
have more space to hold it. That's what came up for me as you were saying that. Like we carry it differently
Mhm.
as we go throughout time. And yeah, I'm just so appreciating your that poem. It's so interesting. I want to read it again. I'll have to go find the
Yeah.
poem and read it again because I imagine that same line that you named of they all wish that they were you.
Yeah.
That line struck me too, and I wonder if in a different way, like in our grief journeys, like maybe in 5 years, that line might strike me in a different way.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I'm just holding
Mhm.
that it's a real process. We're kind
Yeah.
of ever unfolding around it, and I love that you've brought that to our community and in your workshop and in the work that you're doing out in the world, and just so appreciative of who you are, who you show up as.
Thank you, Emily. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. When you were talking about the rock and the jar, it also made me think about how, and I'm very much guilty of this, of like, oh, my life, like waiting for like your life or your circumstances to change before you
Yeah.
begin healing.
Hmm.
And I think that was a part of what like struck you around like, trying to outpace the dark. It's like, as long as I can keep it at bay, then I don't have to be with what is. And I think in some ways what I would tell myself is like, I can't be in my healing because then I guess the truth is I can't, then I won't be able to objectify myself any
Hmm.
longer.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's the reality. As I begin to do my own healing around this, even as the circumstances are still
Yeah.
not yet resolved,
Hmm.
um, I no longer have to objectify myself to be in relationship to all of this, to be in relationship to my deep love and yeah, and the sadness that comes from that.
Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome. Thank
Is
you
there
for
any?
having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering, is there anything else as we move to closing that you would like our listeners to take away from our time?
No, I just want to say I really appreciate the opportunity to bring my full self here.
Hmm.
And it's been really nice to connect in this way and to share from a much more heartful place than maybe I would have had access to, years before. So it's sweet to think of what I give myself permission for today.
Yeah, it's sweet to be on the journey with you and grateful for all the moments of connection we've had and that we've got to spend this time today.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious how folks might be able to find you. I know you've got work out in the world and you're supervising clinicians and can you
I am. Yeah.
yeah, tell folks where they can find the work that you're doing.
Yeah, they can reach out to me by email, sam@intersectionalpsych.com. My website is intersectionalpsych.com. They can also find me on Psychology Today. I'm also on the training assistant page on the CTTC website.
Fantastic. At complextraumatrainingcenter.com if anyone wants to find Sam there. Thank you again, Sam. So appreciate you.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. To find more information about our guest, check the show notes or visit us at complextraumatrainingcenter.com/transforming trauma. Our spring 2027 NARM Therapist training is designed to help you expand what's possible in your trauma work. This live online program offers a structured, clinically grounded way to build more precision, confidence, and effectiveness in treating complex trauma and adverse childhood experiences. If you're ready to strengthen your clinical impact and work with greater depth, we invite you to join us to get trained in the NeuroAffective Relational Model. Enrollment is now opened and space is limited. Visit complextraumatrainingcenter.com to learn more and apply.